indigenous people of Guatemala, who makes up the majority of the population, but yes, they're landless, they don't have access to education, and this is what the brother is saying to us. And if the Guatemalan regime can treat its own citizen that way, think about how it would treat those who are not its citizens. Something to think about. We would like to go on to Brother Nuri Mohammed, who will be covering the Maritime Act that is in front of the House of Representatives in Belize, and he will be using a map that is here to show and illustrate the area of dispute. Brother Nuri Mohammed.
With the name of God, most gracious, most merciful, greetings to you all. It's a historic occasion, and I don't think that we should lose sight of that. It's a historic occasion because no time in the history of this dispute has both political parties come together and said to the people that now is the time that we must cut a deal. It has always been throughout the history that there was some room left open for dispute. There was some room left open to argue. When the People's United Party presented the people of Belize with the heads of agreement in 1981, even though the opposition party did not move immediately to oppose it, they eventually rode the tide of dissatisfaction that came as a result of a grassroots movement that was in opposition to this. But in this new national bipartisan commission, headed by Prime Minister George Price, who is the leader, of course, of the People's United Party, along with Foreign Minister Said Musa, the chairman of the People's United Party, and in concert with Manuel Esquivel, who is the leader of the United Democratic Party, and former Prime Minister of Belize, and Dean Barrow, who is the deputy leader of that party, and the former foreign minister. All men who have held the top leadership position in the country. They have consort together to say that this is the only way in which we can solve this dispute. This is historical, unprecedented. We've never had a situation like this before, and we shouldn't take it lightly. What we are being told by these gentlemen, and if we are to give them the benefit of the doubt, we will have to assume that they have our best interests at heart. And at this present time, I personally do not see any evidence that they do not have our best interests at heart. But what I do believe is catching them is some kind of psychological block that if we don't solve the problem in this manner, we have no other way left open to us. And this is what both Mr. Price as well as Mr. Esquivel is saying. The law, I have not read in any detail. I have not gotten an opportunity to see the act. But from what I've been able to gather about it, I understand that what it will do basically is to
define the line of, it will define our boundaries from the Sarstoon going across to the Rangwana, pardon me, Sapodilly, which is Rangwana, same area, Sapodilly Keys, that our present territorial boundaries permit us a 12-mile limit from the coast out. But this particular law will only permit, under its definition, for us to claim 3 miles in this area. It will mean that the rest of what would normally be ours would then belong to Guatemala. Because Guatemala is in fact stating that they need this access to the high seas. And the only way in which they can get access to the high seas presently is to go overseas that belong to Belize. The rationale that we have been given very eloquently by Mr. Barrow in the Amandala newspaper is that we are at the point, he suggests, where we have to take this position, because if we don't take this position and give Guatemala this small amount, we stand the chance of being forced into a compromise situation, and we may find ourselves losing more. At least this is how I read the ultimatum which he's giving us. I said earlier that I feel like we are put into or that our leaders are reacting to a psychological pressure. What is that psychological pressure? I have to ask myself as a Belizean, why does this position have to be the bottom line? Why is it that we cannot negotiate from a different position? Why is it that this particular proposition is the last choice, the bottom line, to use the language of the legal people? I have to ask myself, what kind of pressures would have been brought to bear on both the UDP leadership and the PUP leadership to put them in a position where they must come to us and tell us that we have no ultimatum. This is it. This is the bottom line. What kind of pressure? Again, I suggest that we are influenced by a psychological block in terms of how we analyze what is going on in Guatemala. And by the way, I think that the only way that we here in diaspora could get to the root of this is for us collectively to say to the bipartisan commission that we want you to come to Los Angeles and address a tongue meeting, a tongue gathering. Hopefully more Belizeans will be here, and explain to us why this is a bottom line, that land must be ceded to Guatemala. I think that's the only way we'll get it, because whatever the panelists say tonight remains just our opinion. It doesn't change anything at all. And in fact, that is not our attempt. Our attempt is more information
and sharing what we know and what we feel about the situation in hopes that we could at least show that there's great concern regarding this. Our brother Felipe said that the land in Guatemala is owned by 2%, and that the indigenous people, who make up 76%, are landless people. So I have to ask the question, if it is 2% that owns the land and owns the wealth in Guatemala, then who exactly are we ceding land to? Is it the people of Guatemala who have to run out of their country seeking refuge elsewhere? Or are we not falling in line with a bigger plan in that region? We must take time to understand that Guatemala and all of Central America fall into a very big master plan that has been working for some time. And we must not think that the United States doesn't have a very strong vested interest in what takes place in the solution to this Guatemalan claim. And we must not be so naive as to believe that our leaders are merely coming to us because they really don't have any other way to solve this problem, and so therefore they're making this sort of presentation to us because there is no other way to go. It is because of the pressure that is on them, not because there is no other alternative. There are other alternatives. I would not get too deep into these other alternatives because I'm still studying them. As you know, this is an unfolding situation, and I would prefer to do some more research on the international implications of some of the thoughts that I have had on this area before I make public my suggestions. But I know that ceding land or ceding sea, which is the same, should definitely not be one of the solutions. And I believe that we who are over here should take it very seriously and not merely look at it as if it's something at a distance and, well, I ain't never gone a PG anyway, and you know, so I just don't see. If we take that opinion, then we are victims of that psychological block that we're talking about. Our brother Felipe said that the reason why the Guatemalans are rushing after years of intransiging, they are rushing to solve this problem because they're trying to improve their human rights record. They're trying to impress banks in Europe, where we are not going to allow them to impress banks at our expense. You impress banks in your own way, but not at our expense. So, dear people, my feelings in regards to this matter is that we should be vigilant. I'm happy that Mr. Castillo is here so that he could take back the sentiment to his boss, who is part of that bilateral commission, and let him understand that there are feelings of discontent, even in Los Angeles, surrounding the idea that they would have the audacity to cede land and still tell us that we're not really ceding land. We hope that this sentiment gets down there through him. If it's not through him, it will get to Belize. And we hope that the constructive way that this whole process will evolve is that we don't want to create disruption in government. We're not talking about creating difficulty for the government. This is not the objective here. This is to lodge a protest in regards to something that the people should have been consulted on. And if this is the consultation process, then we are saying, as we are being consulted, that we no go for that. Thank you very much.
As you have observed that the presentations were to the point, very short and summarized, so that you, the audience, can participate, each and every one of you. You are here because there is something of a national issue that is going on, and we will have a mic on the right-hand side by Mr. Barrow. The mic is open for those of you who have comments that you want to make surrounding the subject, and if you have questions to any of the panelists. Mr. Castillo, the Honorary Belizean Consulate in Los Angeles.
Okay, first of all, I also share the concerns of all Belizeans. Of course, we don't want to give away any land, and I agree with Mr. Tillett when he said that if you have water, anything underneath, also the land. And as Belizeans, we have to band together to make sure that no land is ceded